First, there were people movers. Then, people movers and even more people movers. Then Renault thought about the people who didn't like the bulk of the MPV, but still liked to be up high and have the flexibility of taking out seats. Thus, the Renault Scenic was launched.
What have the following cars got in common? The Jaguar XK8, the Porsche Boxster, the BMW 5 Series, the BMW Z3, the Mercedes SLK. I'll tell you what they've got in common. None of them, not one of them, is as good as this car here. Well, that's not me talking, that's the jury, the 55-man strong jury of journalists who come up with the Car of the Year awards every year. And they've decided that this car, the Renault Megane Scenic, is a better car than all those great cars that I've just mentioned. What's more, it's also a better car than highly credible new cars like the Volkswagen Passat, the Skoda Octavia, the Ford Ka, and the Audi A3. It wiped the floor with those, and it wiped the floor with all those other supercars I've just mentioned to you. It's the Renault Megane Scenic. It's the best car on the road according to the judges, and I can't think why. Well, if you think that the Scenic looks like a cross between a conventional 5-door family hatchback and a mini MPV, a mini people carrier if you like, you're absolutely right, because that's what it is. It's a wacky design, there's nothing else like it. It's the only small MPV on the market, although Renault like to call it an activity car rather than an MPV. And our very own Ginny Buckley caught up with Renault's head of design, who talked her through the new Megane Scenic.
I think that the market is changing dramatically right now, and the days are over of cars where you're hoping to make 3,000 a day and sell 3,000 a day. It's a market which is a market of offer rather than demand, and so therefore you really have to understand your customer. And clearly with the Scenic we have a vehicle which is so different to anything which has been built so far. There's been a craze for MPVs, of course, but they are a little bit too expensive for the average family. And with the Scenic we're offering a new type of car for European families, and I think it's going to go really well.
Are you hoping to open the market up much in the same way as the hatchback did for the 60s? Absolutely.
If I look at the way that the response has been in the first days of sale, we've had more than 7,000 orders, and I think 1,000 of those were before the prices were known. So I think that we are clearly going to open up a new era, and the enthusiasm that we had at the last Paris Motor Show was, we have never lived anything like that before.
It's quite an exciting time for you.
It is. It is.
The car market is very crowded. Are you confident enough that the niche is there for the Scenic?
Well, I don't think it's a niche. I really think that the future of the automobile is oriented towards the Scenic type of vehicle, and that the ordinary five-door hatch will eventually become a niche segment. I think the industry is going towards this type of vehicle.
One of the many reasons why this car won the 1997 Car of the Year award is its functionality, according to the press release that comes with it. And I guess this is what you could call one of the functional features of this car, this little aircraft style table which collapses every time you lean on it, so I'm not sure how clever it is. But I've got to say, it's a wacky interior, it's very versatile, and that's again another point that wins it the title. But let's look at some of these other things. General design, I mean, what do you think of the general design? All right, it's different, but it only looks like a small people carrier. Nothing more, nothing less. Comfort, well, I'm not particularly comfortable in this car. Safety, well, yeah, it's got a lot of good safety features. But I have to say that when you look at some of the other contenders for the title, things like Mercedes-Benz and Porsches and BMW, what would you rather wrap yourself around in or hit a lamppost in? This car, or a Mercedes, a BM, or a Porsche? We then get on to things like driver satisfaction. Well, I can tell you, having driven things like the Porsche and the BM, you get a lot more satisfaction driving those cars than this one. And then perhaps one of the final things, price, and that's an interesting one. Despite the fact that this is a 5-door hatchback car, albeit a very versatile 5-door hatchback car, it's going to be costing quite a bit more actually than a conventional 5-door hatchback. So you've got to look towards paying something of the order of £13,000 when this car goes on sale. The thing that really puzzles me about this car is that if anybody was going to be enthusiastic about a car like this, it should be somebody like me, a 30-something bloke on a kind of modest to middle income. In other words, you know, a kind of ordinary guy in the street with a couple of kids, which I have, and yet I don't want a car like this, and my kids don't want a car like this. I mean, to say that it's multi-purpose and activity isn't enough for me. It just doesn't have that gotta have it factor. And like I said, I find it quite ironic that I'm the perfect candidate. I should be the sort of bloke getting excited about a car like this because it, in theory, suits my lifestyle and it accommodates my kids, and it's got the versatility and all the things that go with having children. But quite frankly, on a long-term basis, I wouldn't be seen dead in a car like this. And the reason is that it just screams out at people, family man. And I'm not sure when I drive down the street, I want to demonstrate that I'm a family man. And similarly, for women, I'm not sure that when a woman drives a car like this, she wants to scream to the world, yes, I'm dropping off the kids at school, or I'm taking the old man down to the railway station because he's off to the office for the day, or I'm going to meet the girls for coffee morning. And if you drive a car like this, you might as well have a sticker down the side saying that sort of thing, because you are a very particular type of driver if you go for a car like this. You're a family driver. You've got kids, you've got to pick kids up from school, go shopping. Do you traditionally like people carriers?
I don't actually. I think they look a bit ridiculous, but
why is that? Is that because they say too much about you, you know, that you are a family person and perhaps you don't want to advertise the fact?
Yeah, possibly. And being so high up, I feel like they sort of hog the road a bit.
And maybe feel like driving a minivan rather than a car?
I do a bit, actually.
Can I have a look?
Sure, go ahead. Now, what do you think of that seat fabric and those colours?
It's very wild. Very wild, very nice actually. Yes, plenty of leg room.
Would you invest £13,000 worth of your money?
No, I wouldn't.
It's quite compact actually, isn't it? It's a bit shorter than the normal sort of people carriers.
Yeah, it's really the only small people carrier on the market. All these seats come out, they slide around, you can remove them. You could just drive along with one seat in the car, the driver's seat, if you wanted. Does that appeal to you?
Yes. Well, as a mother and taking them to and from school, it's very convenient.
What about the tables, kids? Have you seen the tables on the back of the chair?
The seats are really child friendly as well because they're easy to clean.
Are they now? That's something I don't know anything about. They look like if you spilt an ice cream or something you'd have problems, but not.
I've got a car with a beige interior and it's a nightmare. That's wonderful. We just borrowed a Dodge Caravan on holiday and the kids like all the little gadgets and all the places to put the cups and things like that. So
a Dodge Caravan being we call that in this country a Chrysler Voyager. That's what it will be sold as here. That would be probably around £20,000. This is about £13,000. What do you think of that price?
Cheap, really cheap.
You're actually considering buying a Renault Megane, although not necessarily a Scenic.
Not necessarily a Scenic. No, we're probably looking more at the saloon, I think, rather than the Scenic.
Because as you know, this is part of the Megane family. There's about 5 of them. How does this appeal to you, this one?
Well, this one actually looks probably better from our point of view than the saloon because it's larger and we're a tall family basically. Even a 12-year-old's fast approaching 6 foot, so this one would probably be a better model to buy.
Well, I don't quite know what I'm driving when I climb into this thing. I mean, it looks like a conventional car in the sense that it's got 5 traditional seats, although they're not so traditional when you consider that you can remove those seats and play around with them, unlike any other car in this class. But it feels very much, I don't know, almost like a little minibus. I don't like this driving position. I feel perched up here. I feel I'm leaning down to grab the steering wheel, and I don't like that. I don't mind high driving positions as a general rule, but there's something that unnerves me about this. The waistline of the car is very low. I'm up here, I'm peering down. I don't know, I feel like a minibus driver somehow. And how is this little minibus when you're at the wheel? Well, you know, it does everything you would expect it to do. It is a Renault after all, and it's difficult to think of a car manufacturer that's having a better time of it at the moment than Renault, what with their Formula 1 success and their Car of the Year awards. But it's pretty unremarkable, I have to say. I mean, everything's where you'd expect it to be, but you don't climb into this car and say to yourself, wow, this is the best interior I've seen all year. In fact, I don't even climb in this car and say to myself, this is the best interior I've seen all week, because I've seen better. It's functional enough. The heating and ventilation system I didn't find remarkable. I was either too hot or too cold when I was driving up in this car late last night when it was icy and foggy. Performance-wise, well, you wouldn't want a family activity vehicle, and that's what they call this. Not quite sure what activity they're referring to, but that's the official term for this car. It's not a people carrier, it's not an MPV, it's an activity vehicle. And really it's a vehicle that will best serve its purpose with a couple of kids in the back, and I suppose your partner by your side. And therefore you wouldn't want to drive the thing like a lunatic, you wouldn't want it for performance, and thank God for that, because it's not terribly punchy, it's not terribly satisfying to drive, although it has to be said, it does everything very, very well indeed. I would have thought with its sort of family car status that it would have had far more little touches to appeal to people who are on a long journey, perhaps visiting relatives or going on holiday as a family unit. And well, yes, there are some large bins here in the door pockets for your rubbish, certainly to contain everything from a pint of milk to a bottle of wine or whatever you want to carry around. But the drinks holder is down at the front here, very easy for the drinks to spill, I think. There's no way of securing that soft drink that you'd have in the front. And very, very small glove compartment. And I'd like to certainly see more nooks and crannies close to me as the driver for all those little bits and pieces that you need. Coins, cigarettes, cassettes, whatever you carry around with you in your car. Now before you invest your £13,000 or more in this vehicle, which incidentally will come with a 1.8 and a 2 litre engine and possibly a turbo diesel as well, you really have to ask yourself, how often will you need to move those seats in and out of the vehicle? Can you get by with an ordinary 5-door hatchback? Can you indeed get by with a small 5-door hatchback, something like a Volkswagen Polo or a Ford Fiesta, for example? If the answer to that question is yes, then you could be saving yourself a hell of a lot of money. If you really need to remove those seats, if you really need all this load lugging capacity, if you really need the versatility that this offers, then go for the Scenic. But you'll be paying a high price.
After the break on Car File, Ginny Buckley looks further into the driving experience of the Renault Megane Scenic.
Now, I'm one girl who's always been a little bit wary of beauty competitions, cars or otherwise, and the Scenic can shout out all it likes that it's car of the year. But what's it actually like to live with and to drive? Of course, this vehicle is from those rather clever people at Renault, the people who credit themselves with inventing the people mover, although I'm sure the chaps at Chrysler would have a thing or two to say about that. But nonetheless, the Scenic was always going to be something very different, and it hasn't let you down. It's packed with a whole host of innovations, not least of which is the rather alarming number of secret cubby holes and storage places, one of which is neatly tucked down here. Now, the only thing I can see with all these is that it could be a problem remembering where you've stashed all your stuff. There are airline-style tables that fold up from the back of the front seats, and they come complete with the good old cup holders. And each of these 3 seats in the back can be taken out to give you more space. They all also move around independently and have their own 3-point seat belts, which means, of course, an end to the squabbles over which of your 3 kids has to sit on the lumpy bit in the middle. In fact, this centre seat can even fold down to become a table, or if you want to take it out completely, you can replace it with a locker or even a portable fridge. But hey, if you've got a fridge on board, then surely you'll be needing a PowerPoint. What do you mean? Like this one, just down here. A car that's really thought of absolutely everything. Yes, there are floor pockets, door pockets, map pockets, every conceivable kind of pocket. Perhaps this is Renault's idea of a game for the kids on a long journey. Forget spot how many red cars you pass. Let's play spot the number of pockets in the Scenic. In the 2 weeks that I've been driving this vehicle, there is just one thing that has driven me absolutely mad. You come to it laden with bags, with all your gear that you load in because there's lots of space for all that. And then you come to start it. Key in the ignition and off you go. But no, you don't, because this clever immobiliser kicks in after you've had the vehicle unlocked for just 60 seconds. So you have to do this, lock it again, unlock it again, and then you start it, and finally you can set off. Now I know it's meant to be a security vehicle, but somehow it makes me feel as if it's protecting the vehicle from me. Oh well. But of course, functional and practical is one thing, but let's see what it's like on the road. In a world where we like our vehicles to fit comfortably into a certain category so we know just what it is that we're driving, the Renault Scenic has a class all of its own. It's not quite MPV, but not quite family car. But thankfully I can tell you that the Scenic shares its driving characteristics with a car rather than with an MPV. Now this is the 2-litre petrol version, and it's really quite nippy and agile. It gets in and out of traffic around town without any problems, it has good acceleration, and it cruises quite comfortably out on the motorway as well. The Scenic steering is extremely light, and there is a hint of understeer as you hit some corners. You know, I have to say that for me the steering is too light. But I suppose that if you've been out all day and you're carrying heavy shopping bags and tired children, which let's remember, this is what this vehicle is designed for, then something with steering as light as this might be quite welcome. As with everything else, the interior is also extremely well thought out. It's functional and everything laid out just where you'd like it to be. My only gripe really is the handbrake, which is a little bit awkward to reach. You've got to remember that the Scenic was designed to get to you, your family and all the clutter you carry around with you from A to B in relative ease and comfort. And it really does just that. It's extremely easy to drive, and in no time at all you will feel comfortable behind the wheel. Don't let the size put you off, because it really isn't a problem. It's extremely easy to park, extremely easy to drive. The only thing I would say is that you do experience a fair amount of body roll, which is quite normal for a vehicle of this height and this weight. If you haven't experienced it before, it will seem a little bit strange, but don't let it worry you. You soon become used to it, and trust me, driving it is really not a problem. Now, it may drive more like a car than an MPV, but thankfully it's got a lot of the features that we love so much about the MPVs. It has this wonderful high driving position. You're sat up here on the road and you can see everything around you. It also feels extremely light and airy, and there's loads of space, another thing that you get from an MPV. Now these two factors, when combined, means that you have a lovely position behind the wheel, and visibility is absolutely excellent. And that's not only very good for the driver, but also good for the passengers, and particularly the kids that are stuck in the back seat on those long journeys. So yes, I have to say, the Scenic is one beauty that really deserves the accolades bestowed upon it. It claims to be an activity vehicle, and that it certainly is. But you know, it may be packed with every conceivable gadget and gizmo, but for me it's missing the ultimate 90s accessory. A big fluffy dog and a couple of kids.
The Scenic is fine for some, but the full-size MPV is still king for others. Renault didn't abandon their Espace project when the Scenic was conceived. Indeed, they improved it. Ginny Buckley met up with their design chief at an international motor show.
So here we are at the new Espace, Patrick. Tell me about it. What have you changed this time around?
Well, this is, in terms of interior packaging, quite a revolution, because contrary to what we do in normal cars, in let's say 99.9% of cars around the show, they have one heater, which is located right in the center of the vehicle. Heaters nowadays are absolutely huge. They're as big as a petrol engine of a car of the 1960s. It's extremely deep, it fills the whole of the instrument panel, which means that today we have very little available space for stowage. So we took the design challenge of developing a vehicle with two heaters, two smaller heaters, one located on the left-hand side, one on the right-hand side. And as a result, we've developed this absolutely huge storage space where you can actually put an attaché case if you want to.
Which on an MPV is really what it's all about. You want movement and you want space to store things.
Indeed. So storage has always been a big issue for the designers, because clearly the biggest challenge of the designers today is to push the component manufacturers to reduce the size of their components. Namely, the miniaturization that happened in the electronic industry. The first pocket calculator were as big as a phone in the 1970s, and now they're so small that sometimes they're even too small, you know, the ones on the watches. So the big issue is that in the automobile business, the components have not been miniaturized, and we have so many new things like airbags and so on, which means that glove boxes have become glove boxes. You can only put a pair of gloves. So we are fighting for space within all our new vehicles.
Why did you feel the need to update the Espace? Is it because you're the market leader and you're conscious of the others snapping at the heels?
Well, yes, you know, we launched the Espace. We were the first to launch an MPV in Europe 15 years ago. The first month we sold 4. So, you know, when you're a pioneer, you also take a lot of risks. Yeah. And it took about slightly more than 10 years for the competition to follow up. And they've done that, I think, rather well. But basically, they designed not with a rear view mirror, but certainly with an eye looking at what the Espace was doing. We have the advantage of having a tremendous customer base because we have loyalty from 15 years of customers. And it is through their help, and a lot of children also, because we work with children. We get them into the design studios and listen to them. Tell us, you know, what do you think about this kind of fabric?
Let them pile into it and mess it up, do you?
That's how we design things like storage space, which looks like Alibaba's cavern, you know, in the floor of the Scenic. And here we designed these special type of seats where they feel they have their own environment. The great thing I remember of my childhood was spending journeys at the back of seats, fighting with my sister. So I would have my muscles in my left thigh absolutely stiff by the time I would arrive at the end, because I fought during the whole journey for my territory. And this is how we design cars for children. We think about them.
You've remembered all these things from your childhood and you put them into this car. So where next? Where does the Espace go from here?
Our aim is to design even lighter seats for the future, and I'm not going to tell the competition all the new things that we will bring, but we'll certainly try to maximize or optimize, let's say, the inside of the space of our vehicle. We continually tell our engineers, gentlemen, the purpose of developing a vehicle is for it to carry as much space and to carry people, not to carry mechanical bits.